go. Hello and welcome to a Mystic Chat episode 20. Today we are going to talk about the Mexican Day of the Dead with our lovely co-host, Laura Gonzalez. But before we get into all that, I want to just say hello. I am Chris Allaun. I am a published author and an ordained minister with the Fellowship of the Phoenix. And with that, I would like to introduce my other co-host, Ruby Ruse. Ruby, introduce yourself.
Thank you so much. Hello, I am Ruby Ruse. I am a pagan-themed YouTube artist. My channel name is Fairy Fortunes. I talk about fairy folklore, fairy magic, and also some fun and fanciful fairy-themed events. So I do hope you will consider checking out my channel, and I'm very excited to introduce another co-host is the fabulous Luke Babb.
Hey everybody, my name's Luke. I am a devotional polytheist in a couple of different traditions. I'm also with the Fellowship of the Phoenix. My pronouns are they, them. And I am also a columnist at The Wild Hunt. You can find my columns there under my name. Without further ado, the star of the show today, Laura Gonzalez.
That's awesome. Thank you, Luke. Hi, my name is Laura Gonzalez. I'm a tarot reader and a witch for hire. And I am also a priestess of the goddess and a minister in training with Circle Sanctuary and a podcaster. And I do a lot of things, but there is not one thing that I am an expert on except for what we are going to get into today. So allow me to take you first to my big old slideshow, and I hope everybody can see this. And give me a thumbs up, guys, so I know you can see the slideshow. Okay, beautiful. So the first thing that I want to tell you all about Day of the Dead, of course, is and I told Chris we were going to talk about that. Is Day of the Dead is Dia de Muertos. Is not Dia de los Muertos. That is something that is very funny that happens, and it's called an accident of translation. And I remember being a student and my teachers talking about accidents of translation. And I used to think about the words driving a car and then getting into an accident, because that's exactly what happens. Dia de Muertos, when you translate Dia de Muertos to English, you have to put Day of Dead. And then when you translate that to Spanish, that as the, which is los. And so for us Mexicans, that is a funny telltale of who is creating the content. And if it says Dia de los Muertos, we know it's not a Mexican person. Or some Mexican Americans actually say los. So we know it's not a Mexican person per se. So I'm going to give you my most precious gift. I love talking about Day of the Dead. I've been investigating this subject since I was 12 years old. So there is 35 years on the making, and there is about this much of information, and I'm going to give you today about this a little bit because we have only just about 45 minutes or so. And it is my passion, and it all started when I was at the school and doing offering an ofrenda, an altar for Day of the Dead, because we do them every year in school in Mexico. And you know, your class is supposed to do one, and I did one with an Aztec motif. And my teachers, the judges, and the principal went at me saying, why are you doing this in the Aztec motif when this is a Catholic celebration? And my little 12-year-old face was already sassy, and I was like, no, this is an Aztec celebration. And the teachers keep telling me no, and I show them my research, and that meant that lit a little engine on my behind, because I've never stopped researching. So the lady that you see on the screen, her name is Mictecasiwat. Don't worry, I'm not going to ask you to repeat the names. And she is the goddess of death. And here we have her counterpart, the god of death, and his name is Mictlantecutli.
Mm.
Well, back to her. She is, um, the Aztec people are actually called the Mexica Tenochca people, and their religion is not a religion. It is actually a lifestyle or a philosophy of life. And within that philosophy, there is the understanding of everything in nature is sacred, including ourselves, obviously. And all the process of our body and all the process of regeneration, life, death, birth, growth, flourishing, etc., and then dying and regenerating once again. I don't think they had a concept of reincarnation, but rather a concept of everything has cycles. They were an amazing mathematician and astronomers, and part of all of the things that you see on the codices and all of the statues and all of the carvings, every single thing had a meaning. And lo and behold, the skull, actually, the cranium represents a time of resting. So if you go to Google and you Google Mictlan, it's going to tell you is the underworld of the Aztec lore and is the hell of the Aztecs and is where the dead go and all of that thing. And Mictlan does not mean that. Mictlan is a state of resting. It's not a place, it's a state of resting. And it comes from the Aztec word or derives from the Aztec word Miquisli. And Miquisli means to dream, to be, on a state of such relaxation that you're dreaming. And that is what happens when we are doing the eye thing when we sleep, the rapid eye movement, the REM. And when we are doing REM, our body is repairing itself. And of course, all this information comes from people who are still in Mexico living and using the ancient language, and people who are going to those places and compile the information and decipher the languages. And so Miquisli is to dream, Mictlan is to be in that moment of dreaming. And why was it so important, Mictlan and Miquisli, and then these two beings, Mictlantecutli and Mictecacihuatl, why are they so important? Because lo and behold, they are talking of the processes of our body to regenerate itself. And her particularly, because she is feminine, and again, we're not talking gender orientation here, we're talking concept of femininity. What we humans, bag into feminine, is what you don't see, is what happened without your senses being present. And so what she represents is our bodies at rest and recuperating, regenerating themselves, detoxifying and repairing everything that has happened during the day. And then he is more luminous, and he represents what happens on the outer side of our body when that process is happening, and how our bodies are very at a point very vigil when we're sleeping, and then at a point they are completely disconnected. The Mexica people, the so-called Aztecs, also have another metaphor for death, dying, rebirth, regeneration, repairing, etc. And that is the concept of the seed and the flower. And so it said there is a time for being a seed, and then you are a seedling, you grow, and then you are a flower, so you're blooming, and then you become the fruit, the point of maturity, and then you wither and decay, and then you drop your seed back again into the earth. And that is another analogy, a metaphor for life and life cycles. And why is that important? Well, because these two characters, the anthropomorphizing of the forces of our body's regeneration were celebrated on 2 months, 2 months of the Aztec calendar. So if you like Day of the Dead and you know that nowadays Day of the Dead is 2 days, think about having 40 days for Day of the Dead. And I know a couple of people. I know Laura, Frida Kahlo, and probably Chris Allaun will be the three first in line. And mind you, yes, I put myself before Frida because I'm very obsessed with Day of the Dead. So just a little. So these 2 months are called Tlazochimaco and Xocohuetzin. And Tlazochimaco means the flowering of, the time when the flower bloom. And then Xocohuetzin is the time when the fruit falls from the tree. And as you can see, there is the analogy for being a flower, so being young, and then being a fruit, and then the seed falling down, so being of a certain age. And because the process is you go, do Miquistli, you come back, you go to Mictlan, you come back, you go to Mictlan, you come back. Ideally, if you're healthy, you can go to Mictlan many, many times, and then eventually you don't come back, right? Eventually, ideally was you fall on, you die on your sleep, and then that's it. And they used to celebrate those who die young on the first month on the Tlazochimaco because they were the little seedlings and the flower that was just opening. And then on the second month, the month of Xocohuetzin, they will celebrate those who were more open and mature flower, fruit, and or withering flower and seed that is going back into the earth. And the name of the holidays were Mikaihuitontli for the young people, and the Way Mikaihuitl, which was the way. Every time you hear the word way means big in Nahuatl. And the Way Mikaihuitl, it was the big festivity of the dead. Those two holidays, one for young and one for old, when the colonizers came, first of all, think about being the colonizer and coming to a new land with a mentality of everything is sin. We just had the Black Plague. We know that we had piles of skulls and skeletons. We didn't have a place to bury the dead. It was a gruesome scenery. It was really, really terrible what happened in Europe and all those people who died, such terrible deaths and the times of the plagues. And then you come to a new land and all you see is skulls and hands all over the place. And with their narrow mind concept of Christianity, the devil, etc., coming to see this, it must have been terrifying. But nonetheless, they came and they tried to eradicate 40 days of holidays. And they say, no, we're going to celebrate All Souls Day, and then we're going to celebrate All Saints Day. And that's when the 2 months were shrink into 2 days and put into November 1st and 2nd, with the idea of eradicating the custom and the tradition, and they just cemented into Catholic religion. I often do a very bad taste joke that I can make because I'm Mexican. Don't do the joke if you're not Mexican. I always say Mexico is the most pagan country in the world. Don't tell the Mexicans. They think they're Catholic. And the reason being, all this Catholic influence that came to Mexico via the colonizers was infused heavily with pagan DNA, because the Roman Catholic Church had a lot of pagan influence. And so now we see on modern day offerings, we see the flower and the fruit that has never changed, is always been there. but now we have all these Catholic influences that if you put under the microscope, you can see the pagan DNA, such as the fire for purification and the water for purification and the cut paper to represent air for purification. And there's a lot of purification happening here. And then the earth representing the ground and richness and wealth. And so we have all these pagan aspects, but they are hidden in Catholicism. What you see right now on your screen is what normally happens on little towns in Mexico. It happens in the city a lot too. And why I say little towns is because those towns usually will have a path of marigold flower petals that go from the grave into the home of the deceased loved one. Unfortunately, I have to include this now, this year on my Day of the Dead workshop. This is the first time ever. We don't know, we don't remember ever the cemeteries being closed and people not being able to do this. And because COVID, I was just informed that the cemeteries in Mexico are closed. They're not going to be open. So this will be the first year ever, I'm getting emotional, that we're not going to have this on the cemeteries in Mexico, which is a really, really damn shame. But COVID and, what's going to happen, how that is going to translate, I really hope people can do stuff at their homes. Because, of course, we do a lot of stuff at home. What you see now on your screen is one offering that is actually on a museum, but it has more of an integration of what is now the syncretized Day of the Dead as we know it now, the modern Day of the Dead, with the levels. And those levels on the altar, if you ask different Mexican scholars and historians, is like it represents heaven and hell and the earth. And some say it's 9 months because it's the 9 levels because it's the 9 months of gestation. And some others say it's 7 because it's the 7 rings of hell. And there is a whole lot of different explanations. The truth of the matter is the original altars that the Aztecs used to have, it was soil on the floor, it was 1 level, and it only had fruit and flowers and 2 images of Mictlantecutli and Mictecacihuatl. That was it. But because of the colonizers, and they bring some rich pagan, Catholic influences, so we have now these altars. And I'm gonna try to pace myself a little faster. Then we have this lady, and everybody knows her. Her name is La Calavera Catrina. And believe it or not, she's very, 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 very young. She is only 100 years old, like 110 maybe. And she was painted by Jose Guadalupe Posadas. No, she was not painted by Frida Kahlo. Wah, wah. Sorry to disappoint y'all. It was Jose Guadalupe Posadas who exclusively did a lot of satire painting, cartoon art, and lithograph images like this one. And she was a political satire because in Mexico, you know how they do the Groundhog Day here in the United States, and everybody sees the little animal coming out of the thing, and it's on TV and on every news. Well, in Mexico, on Day of the Dead, every news program will have a little bit of a satire rhyme, a satire verse that pokes fun on politicians and influencers and rich people and whatnot. And this was once making fun of Mexican people who were trying to dress as if we were French when we had no food to eat. And that was in the times of Maximilian, the emperor, the only emperor that Mexico had. He was killed. I'm not sorry. Anywho, she is very young, and she has become an emblematic image, but she is not Mictecasiwa. Her name is Calavera Catrina, and they are two different images, and they represent two different things, but she has become more emblematic. Big parenthesis here. She is not La Santa Muerte. Santa Muerte is an egregore that has nothing, absolutely nothing to do with Day of the Dead. It is part of Mexican culture, counterculture, religious counterculture, to each their own. But Santa Muerte is not the goddess. She's not the dark goddess, and she's not the goddess of Day of the Dead. Please, folks, don't repeat those mistakes, and don't repeat that information that is wrong and is mistaken. Moving on. Oh, that's me. I'm sorry. I don't know how that got there. That got there because we're going to talk about appropriation soon. But if you're Mexican and you do this, you're not appropriating because this is your culture. If you're a Mexican, if you are not a Mexican, don't do this. No matter what, don't do it. Thank you. Moving on. We have the painting by Diego Rivera, Un domingo al atardecer en la Alameda Central, which is very long title and harder to translate. But the point of the matter on this painting is it was Diego Rivera who painted her with a body, and then he gave her this feather boa, which is literally a feather boa, because it represents Quetzalcoatl, which Quetzalcoatl actually means the beautiful vibration of life. And it's not the serpent god, and it's not the god of life. We did not believe on gods and goddesses. Again, that is a colonizer's concept, not an Aztec or Mexica concept. So Diego Rivera painted her, gave her a body and a stole. He is painted himself as a child and is holding her hand. And he put his wife Frida Kahlo behind La Catrina. And that is where the confusion comes from, because a lot of people think that Frida painted La Catrina, but she did not. She got very inspired by a lot, but in my opinion, she was inspired by Posadas. I cannot attest to that because I'm not sure. But I can see a big influence of Day of the Dead, Posadas, etc. in the Frida Kahlo work and art, and I guess is valid. This will be the mural on all its beautiful glory, and it's somewhere in Mexico. Don't ask me where because I cannot remember. But this is it. So I'm gonna stop sharing screen, and I'm gonna open for about 4 or 5 minutes to you all folks to ask questions or give comments or have some feedback.
You know, I love all those things. One of the things I think that maybe people may need help understanding is, and I don't want to take too much time with this, about the whole cultural appropriation thing. Like, for example, I've got Day of the Dead tattoos and things like that. But I think that some people, maybe you can explain to people what the difference of having appreciation for something and researching a culture and appropriation, and what's the difference, just so people can understand.
Absolutely, we're gonna go very deep into that, and unless Amy or Luke, I'm sorry, Ruby or Luke had any comments, questions, ideas, or complaints, I shall continue.
One brief question, I guess, because you talked really like clearly about like Aztec culture did not have a concept of gods, right? And yet you've got these like depictions of what colonizing culture definitely saw as like entities, right? Were there ideas of like spirits or like awarenesses that you could interact with, or were these like very like, this is how we talk about this idea, it does not talk about us back? Like
Mhm. I believe that the main concept is, so this is a very, very long explanation, but I will try to make it a 1 minute for you, look. The word ometeo means the whole of two parts together. And ome means two, and teot means rock. And what they're talking about is the egg that creates everything, right? Ometeot, so the one rock, like the earth, or two parts coming together. As we know, for procreation, we need two genders, right? That two, not two genders, but two reproductive systems that can get together and create a third life. And so that was kind of the concept. And when the Mexica people was trying to explain that to the colonizers, mind you, the colonizers came, killed all the white people, they killed all the, you know, prominent minds and everything, and then didn't listen, colonize, absorb, and then got curious. So then they started asking, so what is this, what is that? And then it was the people, literally the Macehuales, it was the people at foot that didn't know all these concepts as great as, it's like, God forbid, it's like the aliens come and kill Neil deGrasse Tyson, and they come and ask Laura what a black hole is. And I'm like, I think it's a galaxy that ate itself. But of course, I'm not Neil deGrasse Tyson, so I don't know what the aliens are going to gather from my explanation, right? What we know, and has been gathered now by researchers such as Dr. Maestro Arturo Mesa Gutierrez in Mexico, is people who speak the language do not ask God for a favor. People who speak the language, they say, it's us, and we are the gods, and we are sacred, and because we are sacred, so everything is sacred. So the concept of the Mexica people was that everything was sacred. Everything was sacred. Everything was to be respected, and everything had a reason to exist. And on that token, they again anthropomorphize all these forces, all these processes, all these entities, and they use a lot of metaphoric language and pictorial language. And so Tlaloc, for example, which is rain, and everybody say, oh, it's the god of rain. Well, Tlaloc is not a god and it's not rain. Tlaloc is what happened to the land on Chicago last night. If you were to go to a patch of soil around 5 o'clock in the morning, 4 o'clock in the morning last night, and put your hands into the soil and bring it up, you would have like soak land that absorb a lot of rain. That is Tlaloc. But it's such a huge concept that you cannot put it into, oh yeah, the god of rain. They're huge concepts. There's a lot of it. They were so obsessed with everything that was nature and the sacredness of nature and time and building calendars and all that, that they cut time. The shortest amount of measuring time that the Mexica Tenochca people had was 13 minutes. And then the cycles, and then the largest one is 52,000 years, which is what happened with the Mayan calendar ended. Oh, the end of the world. No, the end of that cycle. And then the beginning of a new cycle. So they, I guess, in a very pagan way, per se, it was no gods and goddesses, but sacredness and everything. And I often wonder if that is what actually pagan peoples of Europe and other ancient lands were doing, honoring nature and seeing the sacredness and everything. And because of religion, everything got boxed into gods and goddesses. You know, but that is me theorizing, so I don't know. And do the gods talk back to us on the Mexica Tenochca philosophies? Nah. No, they didn't. No. All right, so let me go back to share screen and continue with this thingamajiggy. So thank you all for asking those questions. So as you said earlier, Chris, we're gonna talk about the uncomfortable situations. So Day of the Dead fashion nowadays is Mexican people have a parade. I'm very honored because I've been asked to write about this, and I keep refusing to write about it because it keeps evolving, and let other people make the money. Is my passion. I'm not about making money on this. Mexican people, there is a parade now in Mexico because there was a movie, and in the movie there was a parade, and the Mexican government thought, ka-ching, money, right? So let's bring tourism. And now the parade has been happening, I think, for 3 years now. And so Mexican people, they'll march in the parade, fashion themselves as a sugar skull, and wear traditional Mexican folkloric dance outfits and or elaborated outfits, emulating La Catrina. That's it. We don't do this, which is, I don't know what that is. It's just a polka dress with a sugar skull in the center. We don't do the Spanish bolero with the Spanish hat because this is Spain things. This red Spaniard lady, she's beautiful, but she's not Mexican. She's not representing Day of the Dead. And I don't know what this is. And I don't know what this is. So it's cute. It looks nice. It's not Halloween. And it's not an outfit. And if it's not your culture, please leave it alone. Mm-hmm. And also, this even have wigs. And I'm like, okay, what? And then we have the guys. And the guys are not, oh, come on, slide, switch. So again, with the Spanish bolero thing, this guy looked more like a guy from a movie from Quentin Tarantino. Now I see sugar skulls that they have spider webs because that is the Americanized version of the sugar skulls. Sugar skulls don't have spider webs. This guy looks more like the Baron Samedi, something. Yes, thank you. I can never say his name. This guy, another Spanish inspired. Don't even get me started here. I don't know what this is.
Okay, I'm sorry. I have to laugh at that one. That looks like pajamas.
That looks like pajamas, and it really is hurtful that they grab our culture and they think it's a cute thing to make it into an outfit that is going to be, this don't honor my culture. Even this guy that, by the way, mariachi hats are large. I don't know what the heck this is. And no, people are not walking around Mexico holding pistolas. So there's a slippery slope here, right? There is like, okay, Laura, so do you really have to be that hard on the cultural appropriation? Yes, I do. Do I need to remind you all why? There are kids in cages. There are kids that are dying in cages because of a pandemic. There are kids that are being raped and let to die in cages. There are women who are being operated on and basically sterilized because of the color of their skin. And the United States cannot make up their mind. We either come here to steal your jobs or to suck all your tax money. And when you grab our culture because the aesthetics are amazingly awesome and so cool, but you cannot stand us, it's not fair. It's just not fair, and it's not something that should be done. Shouldn't be done with African culture, shouldn't be done with African American culture, shouldn't be done with Asian culture, shouldn't be done with any culture, period. End of story. Now, what I tell pagans, and when I am around pagans and people where I feel safe to speak about this. Of course, I feel so safe. I don't know. Believe it or not, in the back of my head, I'm like, I wonder how many people is hating me right now. And I don't care. So what I tell pagans is, look, guys, if we educate ourselves, if we really, really educate ourselves, and we know that this comes from the Mexica Tenochca people, they're not Aztecs, but you want to call them Aztecs, that's fine. It comes from the Aztecs. It was combined with the colonizers. It was tried to be eradicated because it happened the same with Samhain. And it's now World Heritage by the United Nations. It's a holiday that is everybody's, but it started in Mexico and it is Mexican. So you want to add it to your calendar? Fantastic. I know people who are pagan and would not celebrate Halloween because they only celebrate Samhain. That is a personal preference, of course. I was going to say reference. A personal preference. Same as if you love Day of the Dead and you want to add Day of the Dead to ancestors' work and to Samhain and to this time of the year, please do it. But understand where it comes from and don't do like this lady did to me. I used to work at a restaurant and she comes and she tells me she loves her food, but she cannot stand our language. I mean, you cannot do those kinds of things.
Oh
It's a whole package, you know. The Day of the Dead comes with Mexicans. It doesn't. It is not sold separately. And speaking of being sold separately, this is what happened at the Museum of Mexican Arts a couple of years ago. There was a whole part of the exhibit called Sold Out because there was the over ridiculous exploitation of the aesthetics of Day of the Dead is just ridiculous. It's just, it is too much. It is too much. And on one hand, as a Mexican, I'm like so proud because it's like, oh my God, something that is ours and everybody loves and everybody holds near and dear and everybody wants a piece of it. Have a piece of it. Have at it. We are Mexicans. You know, I'm getting emotional again. You know that when you come to our homes, the first thing we tell you is help yourself. You can have a piece of it. Oh my God, I'm getting so emotional. So we're not going to say no. We're going to say have a piece of it. But learn where it comes from and learn what you're doing. I have always said the difference between appreciation and appropriation is education. If you get some education within you and you know that it's not the Mexican Halloween, that is not the Mexican Samhain, that as a pagan you get a pass on cultural appropriation, or that because you like it, you're just gonna do it, or you're gonna look at me funny when I'm shopping at Target, that's not gonna fly. Of course you want a piece of it. Look at it, it's beautiful. It is fantastic, it is wonderful. And yes, everybody should have a piece of it. Not only because it is what it is, emotionally, mentally, it is a time of the year where we are allowed to mourn our dead. It is a cathartic moment. It is a healthy moment. We're celebrating those who are gone, and we are celebrating those who are alive. We are celebrating life. That's why everybody's so enamored of Day of the Dead, because it's a celebration of life. And we are also joining generations. The storytelling that happened on Day of the Dead is real. Coco, the movie, got a lot of things right. I love it because when the movie came out, people were waiting for me and they were like, so we love it, or we like it, or we hate it, or what's going on, Laura? Tell us what's going on. And I will say, I love Coco. There is not one Catholic, Christian, or religious tint imagery on the whole Coco movie. And they did their research. The only thing that don't fit on the movie is the alebrijes, the little fantastic flying animals, but it's Disney, and all Disney princesses have a little talking animal on it. But alebrijes are from Mexico, and they are very traditional. So I guess, again, it evolves. So now people are going to grow up thinking that alebrijes have something to do with Day of the Dead, and it's not the worst thing in the world. So of course you want a piece of it. Let's all have a piece of it. Let's all celebrate Day of the Dead. It is, again, a universal, it is being recognized and adopted and written in the United Nations intangible heritage of humanity. So it's not mine. As much as I wish it was mine, it's not mine. It belongs to the world. But let's not be mean to the people where the celebration come from, and help us thrive, because right now we're surviving. And this is why I get so emotional, because we're surviving and we are struggling and we're not having a good time. We never have had a good time, but especially now we're not having a good time, and it's all boiling to the surface. So I've said this before, taking the boot from our neck from the colonizers, physically the boot is not there anymore. Emotionally, for us, the boot's still there. So it really is a white on white conversation that needs to happen. It cannot always be, Laura chooses to do this conversation, and it's very taxing and emotional. And I love to do it because I love you all. And I know this is a safe space to do it. But it's really white people who need to speak to white people and stop each other and tell each other, let's not do that unless we understand the culture and help those people thrive, not just survive. And I will leave you with this reflection. And what are we under the skin if no skulls with never-ending smiles?
That's really cool. Thank you for that. It was really neat.
I feel like I was talking a million words a minute, but
You got a lot of information into a very small
did in
amount of
like
space.
35 minutes.
yeah. And there is, of course, there is a lot more, but I figure for such a small space. I love the comments. Esperanza says, I am crying. I was crying too. Our culture is so beautiful. I didn't know about the pre-colonial narrative, and to know more about this in this capacity has been really eye-opening. And the rest I'll keep for me, Esperanza, and I love you. So yeah, questions, comments, ideas, complaints, suggestions, I'm open to it all.
What's a thing that you wish that you could have included that you didn't have time for?
More detailed explanation of the glyphs and the pictorial imagery and what they mean.
Oh, I have a cool question. I already know this answer, but the audience may not know. What's the purpose of the sugar skulls? What do they do?
It is said, pardon me because I was weeping earlier. It is said that 3,000 years ago, when this tradition started, the Mexica people would actually unearth the remains of the deceased loved ones and dust them off and put them on the altar. Specifically the cranium, the skull. This may or may not be truth. I don't know. I wasn't there, and my time machine is on the shop. So I don't know if this was truth. But what we know is that the skull plays a predominant part on the celebration, because speaking about the archetypes and symbology, the skull represents rest, and the whole holiday, the whole thing is about resting and the resting place. So it is so important to self-care, you know, to have rest time. And then it is a Spanish confection. It's actually called a confectionery, made of sugar, of course. And it is very important. It is very meaningful now. It has taken this very, very important aspect that if a Mexican person gives you a little sugar skull and it has your name on the forehead, please don't freak out. They are not wishing that you're dead. It means they love you very, very, very much.
That's nice.
And it means when you're gone, because we get sad, of course, when people are gone. Who doesn't? I mean, we all are sad when our loved ones depart. But it means you will be remembered. You will be part of my altar. You will be part of my life. I will put I'm giving you in life, I'm giving you a sugar skull. So you know you made an impact on my life, and eventually I will put you as a sugar skull on my altar. I got so emotional. I don't know what's going on. Mercury retrograde. It is, yeah. So, you know, they say, oh, because the Aztecs used to unearth the bones of the deceased ones, and they also say that we used to eat each other, and they also say we used to cook each other, and that is utterly lies and stupid things that the colonizers said. People were buried on clay pots, and people were buried on fetal position. And the clay pot had a purpose. It was to go back into the earth. And because I think it was Columbus or whoever that didn't make it to the land, and so the thing that was happening, somebody was going to be interred on the clay pot. And of course, he saw a clay pot and he thought they're cooking. And what was happening is somebody was going to be interred into the earth. And but there are instances where bones of people, somebody could say, you know how we say now, I can donate my body to science or research. If a musician was a very good musician, and Esperanza, please don't freak out. True story, I learned this to be a true story. Say the person was a flutist and they were about to die, and they say, oh, can you get my femur and made it into a flute, please, so the next generation can play with me? True story. That's how I was told the story, and that's what I was told it happened. And of course, I'm making reference to Esperanza because she's a flutist. Yeah.
I'm over here like, how can I have a femur flute?
Well, she says, now I know what I'm doing with my femur. There you go. You know, the other thing is that when we interred people, it was believed that they were put to the ground with their belongings so they could take the journey into the other world. Bananas. They were interred with their belongings because it was like a grave marker. So for, I don't know about the Egyptians. Of course, I'm not speaking about the Egyptian tombs. But in Mexico, what is now Mexico, say you had to bury Laura, please don't bury me. I'm afraid of bugs. But in the case that you were to inter me on the earth, you will have to put a computer, a microphone, and a couple tarot cards, and I don't know, some sugar skulls and the other dead stuff in there. So you'd be like, oh.
There's actually a good game to play with somebody. If you were interred, if you went into a tomb, what would be the things that people would bury with you? I think that's a very interesting game.
It is. What was this person?
I think it's a fun game.
Yeah.
I'm odd, so.
You know, I totally off topic. I know of somebody who went to Louisiana or Alabama or somewhere, and they found some stuff on the ground, and they decided, you know, trinkets and shiny stuff, and they decided to pick it up and came back to Chicago, and they were haunted by the ghost of a big old black man. And I was like, they need to get their ass back to wherever they picked that up and put it back on the ground. And they did, and the ghost was gone.
Interesting.
Yeah. Anyway, I think it's 7:57, and I truly, absolutely, 100%, I have to leave at 8 o'clock. But I thank you all for allowing me to do this, because the truth is, yes, I asked Chris, can I do Day of the Dead? because it's my passion and I love it. And if I am doing Mystic Chat video blog, I was, of course, going to do a Day of the Dead. So thank you.
That's awesome. Thank you for doing that. I really, Chicago used to have at the, Lord, you probably know the cultural arts in there where they used to have
Yeah,
displays. Are they doing that this year in Chicago or no?
I have no idea. I know Pilsen every year has something. Oh, and speaking of appropriation, if you want a doll or something Day of the Dead, please, for the love of God, go to Pilsen or go to Little Village. Please don't buy shit at Target or whatever. Did I just say shit on the video? I'm sorry.
You guys
Fuck
do
yeah,
it
you
all
did.
the time. Well, do you want to hear something funny? So when I put the shows on YouTube, there's a thing that says, is this inappropriate for children? I was like, well, it depends whose children, because um, I actually bought a lot of Day of the Dead stuff for part of Vallarta, Mexico. And to be honest, I got everything is so inexpensive there. It was worth the trip just to
Yeah.
get all these things because he got like all kinds of stuff like um, things for the garden, things for my altar, things as gifts. It was awesome.
Yeah.
So people know, the National Museum of Mexican Art, which is where I experienced Day of the Dead last year, they have a massive event every year. That's the one down in Pilsen you were talking about, right, Laura?
Yes, yes, yes,
Mm-hmm.
yes. They do, because I'm sorry to interrupt you, Luke. They do in the museum, and then they do a little parade thing around. I don't know this year because COVID.
I was just going to say, I just looked it up. They moved everything online. So
Oh,
it will be a massive event. It will be beautiful. It will be online. I linked in the chat here. So
Awesome.
thank you so much, Luke. Thank you, thank you, thank you.
yeah.
Yeah. So thank you, everybody. Enjoy your Day of the Dead,
Doing that.
and if you're gonna decorate, I'm not saying do like I do, but let me tell you what I do. I do a section of my apartment that is all Halloween, so I can have my very secular Halloween celebration. I do my Samhain celebration. I usually go to Circle Sanctuary, but this year it's gonna be online. So that's my spiritual religious celebration of Samhain. And I put my altar for Day of the Dead on another section of my apartment, just because I know they are not the same thing, and I don't want to mix them around. That's me. You do you, boo.
Before you go, one quick question. So, just for clarification, if a non-Mexican person wants to have a Day of the Dead altar, is that okay, or do you consider that appropriation if they want to have something in their home?
I think having a Day of the Dead altar in your home is absolutely beautiful. Make sure you got flowers. Make sure you got some fruit in there. And if you're going to put sugar skulls, put sugar skulls. Do not put Santa Muerte on it because they have nothing to do with anything. And by all means, have photos of your ancestors. And I'm sure there's a million and one documentaries out there on Day of the Dead. You can watch Coco. You can listen to this worship again. There's other stuff I've done in English, so you can Google my name, Day of the Dead. I'm sure there's like 20,000 things out there on the internet. And yeah, by all means, do your thing. Part of the appropriation is taking the aesthetics, making money of it, and then ignoring the culture. So it is insensitive to dress as a sugar skull for Halloween. So please don't do that. Do you want to put an altar in your home and you want to call it your Day of the Dead altar? Make sure it has marigold flowers or plastic marigold flowers. Make sure you got some kind of fruit in there. Make sure you have the foot of your loved deceased ones, and nobody can tell you not. Just know what you're doing.
Cool, cool. Well, thank you for that. I really appreciate that. And so that will be the end of our show tonight. I appreciate everything. I'm gonna stop recording in case someone wants to chat.